My guest on this week's episode of Suds and Search is Edwin Romero, an independent SEO consultant. Edwin is a veteran digital marketer who has served in senior positions at several different agencies. He is an expert at a very specific and very important field of SEO, website migrations. When a business launches a new website, there's a lot that can go wrong. Edwin brings a level of organization to the migration process and helps to ensure that things are handled carefully from an SEO perspective. About a year ago, he took a leap out of agency life and began freelancing on his own. Many of the best SEOs I know don't work for a large agency. They don't work in-house for some giant corporation. They are freelancers. I start my conversation with Edwin talking about his transition from agency life to freelancer. What made him forego the security of a regular paycheck and go out on his own? How do freelancers get new clients? Does it ever get lonely not having colleagues? I'm going to ask Edwin these questions and many others. Grab something cold to drink and join me for a conversation with Edwin Romero. We'll talk about common mistakes people make during a website migration. We'll chat about the SEO freelancer community. And we'll talk a little bit about his involvement in the digital marketing program at DePaul University.
All right, Edwin, welcome to Suds and Search. How you doing?
Mark, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. It's great to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
I want to get a perspective from you that we haven't really had on the show before, which is the SEO freelancer. So I want to hear a little bit about this journey. But for starters, you were doing great in agency life. You were crushing it. You had some important jobs. I suppose you had some job security and everything like that. What made you want to go out and do this freelancing thing in the first place?
It's multifold. There are two primary reasons why I wanted to go freelancing. For one, I've been doing agency life for about 10 years now, up until probably November of last year. It was fun. It was great. I was leading my team. I was a manager. I created I would say a niche for myself, but I wanted to try freelancing. It was something I'd never done, and it's I think I had that entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
So I wanted to give it a shot, and that was actually born from the second reason why I wanted to do it. My father started an Ecuadorian food distribution company in Chicago, so it's probably the most renowned in the Midwest. And what I wanted to do was kind of help him set himself up for success in terms of retirement. So I felt the freedom I would get would be through freelancing. And that's what I've been doing now. So I have kind of this dual career track right now as helping manage this food distribution company, as well as doing independent consulting.
I love it. I love it. So here's what I would think would be hard about freelancing. You don't have a sales team, as far as I know. You don't have a marketing team.
No.
You maybe want some more clients, and it's all going to fall on you. How do you go about getting new clients as a freelancer? How do you get more work? How do you grow?
For one, you have to be optimistic, and you have to honestly be a people person. You really, really do. You have to be engaged in relationships. I think a part of it is finding a niche. And up until I left, Capgemini was my last job. I developed two niches. That was in Salesforce Commerce Cloud SEO, which is an e-commerce platform, as well as website migrations. They were kind of interlinked. I launched probably 200 plus websites on Commerce Cloud. So all of them kind of, help me develop what a good process looks like, what are best practices, launch essentials to be cognizant of. So that doesn't mean you can't be successful if you're a generalist. You definitely can be. I think the industry is full of really smart folks that specialize, that are, I guess, generalists.
Sure.
But strategically speaking, finding a niche would give you the opportunity to charge a higher rate and have it be a little bit more lucrative.
All right, well, cool. And I would say the other thing about freelancing, at least one thing I do like about agency life, is that there are other people around. So you get a problem, you can bring some teammates around, you can collaborate on how to solve it. Freelancing seems very, it's you. It's just you are in that conference room alone.
Yeah.
How do you deal with it? How do you get through those problems where you can't collaborate? Do you have a network? How do you do it?
So I'm huge into mental and emotional health. So part of it before I actually left was how do I prepare myself mentally and emotionally, have a good support system. I honestly, just to be extraordinarily candid, I have a therapist. I see her every single week. I have a journal. I write periodically. Yeah. And my wife, she is just a great listener. So that's significant. But in all honesty, because of the freelance community, before I even left, and even up until this day, what I do is I reach out to individuals, not even necessarily in the SEO industry, folks that I know that started up their own agencies, just to bounce off ideas off of them. And it's been successful, I would say. Before I left, I reached out to a number of agency owners. I'm not sure if you know Chima from Nigeria. She moved to UK.
I wanted to mention her.
She's
yes.
awesome. She is amazing. I love her organization.
She's got a whole thing for freelancers, right?
Yeah, she's great. Nick from SEO for
Nick
SEO Lunch. Yeah, Nick Leroy. He's awesome. I reached out to him as well, and he was very candid about it. George Romero from San Francisco. So the community is very, very nice. It's very, very tight.
All right, I love it. So, there's so much of like what you see on LinkedIn, like Twitter SEO is about let's scale, let's get bigger, let's grow.
Yeah.
In some ways, it's kind of like nice. You don't have a lot of problems that agencies have as just your own person. But I wonder, do you have aspirations of building out a team underneath you, scaling this thing out? Or are you? This is in and of itself. This is what you want to be doing.
I think I'm still getting my footing. Going back to Chima, I started to mentor an individual from Mexico. His name was Benjamin. And he said, I want to learn from you to be a successful freelance consultant. And I told him, like, listen, when I find the answer, I'll let you know. Like, I'm still learning as I go, if I'm being honest. And I think once I have that foundation, that balance, I'll see what comes out of it. For now, I'm really enjoying just being on my own, trying to figure things out, building. I think I love building and being creative, problem solving. Long term, I want to dabble into writing a book. Okay. If I'm being honest, I want to try, but not necessarily any just SEO book. I want to find a niche that I can write about. So that's probably something I'll tackle in the next couple of years.
All right. Well, I love it, and I love that you've kind of figured out what your thing is. So you mentioned migrations, and I wanted to ask you some questions about that because I knew this about you. So there's a zillion things to consider here.
Yeah.
It seems pretty stressful. It seems pretty laborious. Like you got a lot of work to do. How'd you settle on this? Like of all the things, what really attracted you to migrations? What was the problem that you saw that you could really help identify?
So I think with migrations, 200 website migrations really gives you a lot of opportunity to figure out what works and what doesn't. And I really like having conversations. I love advocating for SEO. When I started, it was always, hey, we have a website migration a month out. The rest of the team is pretty much wrapped up their work, development, design, all these folks are done. Can you do your thing? Well, you can imagine that's a headache because now you have to work around things that are already set in stone, that are cemented. So as my career progressed, I found that I really do enjoy getting in at the ground floor, educating, building an advocacy group within an organization around SEO during website migrations. And all of that really strengthened my communication skills, basically problem solving, budgeting, figuring out processes that work, processes that don't. But I think it's not without its headache. I think one of the worst website migrations, I'll be honest, like it plummeted. The traffic just declined, and it was so heartbreaking because everyone in the organization was like, SEO migrations, SEO, Edwin's your guy. So this did a number on me. Presidents were called, CEOs were called in, trying to figure this out. But all in all, it was a really great learning experience. Things that, I'm grateful for now. I think it really grounded me.
Yeah, I think that's where you learn the most. I think it's like kind of, at least I shouldn't say that. I'm the one who learns by putting, like the stove is hot by putting my hand on the grill. So, okay, let's go into like the actual tactical things that you do now. So you're going to start a migration project. You've got enough time to do it without hurrying. Where do you begin? What are the first one or two steps? Like that's you're trying to get your arms around a big project. What are my first two steps? Where do I begin?
So ideally, let's say we start at the get-go. We're on the ground floor in terms of trying to get budget for it. I think you have to kind of wrap your head around like how big the site is. What are they hoping to accomplish? What are the goals? Is it direct to, or is it what they call it, direct to consumer?
Yeah,
So like
D2C.
when they ultimately start looping in products onto their website where they weren't, e-com in the past, are they looking to consolidate? What are they essentially trying to do with this new experience? From there on out, you have a pretty good understanding, budget accordingly. One of the things I love to do is crawling. I love crawling.
Yeah.
And that's so imperative when you're trying to get your head around how big is the asset that you're working with.
Yeah.
Is it a couple of pages? Is it a couple hundred? Is it a couple of thousand? Is it tens of thousands? So crawling is significant. But not just that, you have to crawl according to Google. And from there on out, you have to basically make sure that you get every single web page that is accessible. But as we all know, like there are things that are being blocked for one reason or another, some web pages that have been gone, things that you need cognizant of. So from there on out, you pull all the URLs that exist on, all the URLs that are obtaining data. So you look at Google Analytics, Google Search Console, you start pulling URLs from SEMrush, Ahrefs. Essentially, just start aggregating all this information around URLs that you want to make sure are accounted for, honestly, in a redirect map.
Yeah.
So I would say 40 to 60% of a migration project, most of the effort is going to go towards redirect mapping.
Yeah.
Now that's going to be reflective of a redirect strategy. How do you manage the couple of hundred, couple thousand, couple tens of thousands that exist, all those URLs? So a lot of that goes back to having conversations, being on the ground floor with the various groups, talking to the web ops groups. So what kind of solutions exist for redirect mapping? Is it going to be managed in the system at a server level? Is it essentially going to be, can you bypass certain logic through wildcards? So it's a lot to pull together, but I think assembling all these URLs is a great first step to understanding how big of an effort it's going to be.
I think that's a great tip. And I wonder if I could probe a bit farther. So we have a redirect map. You said something like 60% of the whole project is just about getting these redirects. What's that other 40%? What are the other, when we go down the rabbit hole, what else are we really looking at? What are the complexities that you run into?
So those are the rest of launch essentials. That includes looking at metadata, making sure that there's a strategy put in place. So for example, a lot of brands have put a lot of time and effort into having a really great metadata strategy. So you don't want to say, you know what, let's forget about it. Put that to the side. You don't want to do that. Yeah. So you want to just essentially say, how can we account for the past in this future? So that's the metadata strategy. It can be programmatic. Then beyond that, there are things like the URLs, making sure that the URLs themselves are optimized. And in some cases, which is pretty neat, you can bypass a redirect map by leveraging your URLs. In some cases, you don't want to change your URLs. And if the technology allows it, you can basically emulate the URLs from your legacy site, if that's optimal. Robots.txt configuration, making sure that you have an optimized file. Sitemap, making sure that your sitemap is up and running and it is devoid of any kind of issues.
Right.
And honestly, just crawling. Making sure that the new site or the staging or development site is reflective of an optimal state. Now, on top of this, I think one of the things that really trips up some brands is that, the nice to haves. Right. I like to say nice to haves because 9 times out of 10, when a site declines in performance, it's not because of page speed. It's not because of schema. And that I will say with a grain of salt. But it's primarily because of redirects and metadata strategy. Now, as such, a lot of effort and energy goes to making sure that stuff is optimal. But by being in the ground floor at the very beginning, you can start collecting requirements. You can start saying, all right, you know what? We're going to talk about redirects, metadata, canonicals, all that good stuff. But the system that you're migrating to, it may not house the opportunity to include things like schema markup. It may not be optimal from a page speed standpoint. How do you want to treat this?
Yeah.
In some cases, some clients are pretty adamant about having things like schema, which makes sense. If you're a recipe site, if you're a content site, schema is significant.
That's it.
Page speed, unless it's extraordinarily slow, in some cases, we like to focus on that post-launch because honestly, the technology has already been built out, the infrastructure is there. then we can start manipulating it post-launch.
Love it, love it. So here's the next thing. You mentioned crawling a number of times. I'm curious the tools for the job. So there's a lot of tools that could do this for you. What's your go-to to crawl, and why do you like it so much?
Screaming Frog.
Screaming Frog, yeah.
Screaming Frog. I mean, it's a local crawl. I can manipulate it a lot quicker than through a web portal or a cloud-based crawler. I forget. I think Deep Crawl's one. I've never played with Deep Crawl, but I like how nimble Screaming Frog is.
Yeah. Ain't broke, don't fix it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing. And it's not all that costly. Right. You know, it's a couple $100 a year. And what's wild is a lot of teams don't actually know that this tool exists. Mm-hmm. So when I talk to a new client, one of the questions is, well, are we QA the redirects post-launch? No. You know, we don't have to do that. We can crawl behind the login. We can crawl before go live through Screaming Frog.
Yeah, I love it. And then the other thing, as you've been talking here, I've been thinking about how many people are involved in a migration. Mm-hmm. A lot of this job is soft skills, isn't it? Like you got to be able to work with web developers. You got to be able to work with a C-suite. You got to be able to work with a marketing team. Yeah. You know, that seems like half the challenge. Like just being able to work with people. No. Yeah.
No, I completely agree. And that's one of the reasons why I do like it. I'm huge on advocacy and educating individuals on SEO. Right. And as you kick off a migration project, you're just basically educating why things should be the way they should be. And if there are issues, let's talk it out. And there's no problem with just talking it out.
Yeah. I would admit, just being a nice guy that people want to work with probably goes a long way in these migrations. So, all right. So this is something I really did want to talk to you about. One of my favorite things about doing these in-person appearances is I have people from Chicago, so I'm going to have a Chicago-specific question for you. Sure. I met you through DePaul University in their digital marketing program, which I'm a humongous fan of. You're also a participant there. I wish they had this when I was in college so that I could have learned more. Tell our audience, because I don't want to spoil it, in your own words, about the program itself and your involvement in it.
Yeah, so the program itself, it basically introduces students to individuals from agencies, introduces them to agencies, headed up by Jackie Kuhl. I think it's Kuhl, right?
Yeah, cool.
Phenomenal. Yeah, she's so sweet. She's so nice. And essentially, we start talking to individuals, students, giving them an idea of what it's like being in an agency, working for yourself. It's a networking event. And in some instances, Jackie has actually had me in the classroom talk about SEO to her students. It's a lot of fun. And it's wild how many resources exist for students nowadays. Yeah. And I think she's really pushing for having a dedicated SEO curriculum, which I think would do wonders for her school.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a great opportunity for the students. They can come out with certifications, with internships, with a bunch of stuff. So I just think and then I get to meet cool people like you at these things. So it's been really fun. So, all right. Well, if people want to get in touch with you or find out more, I do want to point them to your LinkedIn, but how should they do so? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
There are a couple of ways. LinkedIn is I'm most active on LinkedIn, if I'm being honest. I post periodically on my website, edwindanromero.com. From there, you can also subscribe to my newsletter at #PragmaticSEO. I essentially talk about just practical advice, not necessarily news. I think there's a ton of great resources out there for news, but just things on soft skills, how to communicate and whatnot.
Awesome. Well, I wish you all the best in your freelancing journey. You're an inspiration and a heck of a fun person to have a drink with. So I'm going to sign off for now. We'll be back next week with another episode of Suds and Search. Thanks so much.
Thank you.